welcome to episode 166 of The Route. The Route is a glorified coffee chat and podcast form that takes you from A to B with a new guest every episode. As always, I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. Before we begin, just a couple things to cover. As always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast, rate it 5 stars. We're on, I believe, 10 audio platforms. That's all the big ones: Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, and then 6 others as well, as I mentioned. And that's where you can go follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars. It allows the podcast to grow just a little bit easier from there. And in addition to those audio platforms, we're on YouTube as well, where you can see our video episodes. And you can also see some of the clips available there as well. And you can find us at The Routecast on that. That's our username, or just simply searching The Route Podcast. So with that same username, you can then put it into Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those good ones. That's where you can see our clips every week and stay up to date with what's going on. And then in addition to those platforms, we're at The Routecast on LinkedIn. The reason I mentioned that last is just because the nature of who we're meeting with, what we're discussing on the podcast, it's a little unique maybe compared to some others. So if you want to grow your podcast or grow your network, maintain your network, or even just start it, check us out at The Routecast on LinkedIn, and you can connect with myself, each guest every week, or even the people engaging or following the page, because then that way you'll be able to connect with like-minded people. So check us out there, subscribe, follow, etc. at The Routecast, wherever you can find your podcast. Now, with that now said, let's get into today's guest. Today's guest is brought to you by Pickled. Pickled is a new social and sport option coming to those in the Ottawa area. If you're interested in learning more, sign up for their newsletter using the link in the episode description to stay up to date. With that, today's guest. I'd now like to welcome someone who's kicking off their career with a bang. From getting experience in school as a podcast host, funny enough, to interning in business development, to joining the Jays in sales, but now being in the Philanthropy Coordinator role at Jays Care Foundation. William Ord, welcome to The Route. How's it going?
Thanks, Chris, for having me on. It's going great. We just the first homestand of the year just wrapped up for the Blue Jays, so it's a little quieter for now, but still very much in the busy season, but with a lot to look forward to. But yeah, looking forward to chatting on the show and having a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the route's about. And I guess with that said, let's ask the one question we have here before we have our conversation. Take us through your route. Where did it begin, and how did we get to where we are today?
So when it began, it started before it. I guess I was doing some thinking, and the cliche sort of thing is like you start in university, but upon reflection, it started way before that, when I was about 15 or so. I'd always involved myself in sport as an athlete, and my first job, like odd job, was timekeeper at this local learn to play hockey league in South Mississauga, and I did that for a while. And when I was about 15, I got approached one day and was asked if I was able to be the public address announcer for a local charity hockey game that the association had every year. Didn't know what to think of it, but I walk in, and it's not just like just like a timekeeping box and the mic. There was a separate area with like a professional audio and visual team with their own equipment, with every single bit of bells and whistles that comes with it. And I'm just looking around, and I thought, this is really cool. And I did that for about about 5 editions of the show of the charity game, and one year I was the master of ceremonies. But that was my first sort of exposure into actually working in sport, and I was in, and I you start to think, maybe I could, maybe there's some way I can, maybe there's some way I can do this as a career one day, and that's where I found Brock University Sport Management program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, the reputation of that program is quite high. A lot of significant alumni coming out of that program, and still are to this day. And I gotta tell you, beyond the actual experience, which I'll delve into later, the campus itself is beautiful. It is unbelievable to be around. It's right on the Niagara Escarpment. It's in an area where it has its own its community feel to it, and it being an hour away from home, where I felt like I could be away from home, but at the same time easily get back through public transit for a weekend, was a perfect location. And starting out at Brock, took me a bit to find my footing. I find my footing. I would say, but I guess where the first little break happened was when I joined the Brock Sport Management Council, and I remember their first meeting. One of the hosts who was going going on exchange, he said that he needed help with running the podcast, and I didn't know the guy up until that point, and I just came up to him after the meeting and I said, if you needed help, then let me know. And that was the start of 3 years helping run that podcast, hosting, doing post-production, recruiting guests, so on and so forth. I did about 3 years, so 3 seasons, and I think close to or just over 60 episodes in total, from a variety and interviewing a variety of sport industry professionals from every field, from marketing, sponsorship, nonprofit industries, folks that had a sport management degree but use their expertise and knowledge in fields that were unrelated to sports, provincial sport organizations, national sport organizations, and it really gave me a lot of exposure to different areas of the sport industry, unintentionally, all while being a good networking opportunity as well. But it just gave me a lot of insight as to, okay, these are what these areas are like, and I was able to find some niches that I thought I could be proficient in. COVID was a bit of a slog with the whole sports world shutting down, but in fourth year I was able to secure an internship with the Niagara River Lions of the Canadian Elite Basketball League as a business development intern, and first of all, it's a fantastic organization run by very smart people. The River Lions are usually one of the top teams in the league every year, and their business ops is no different. That internship gave me a whole bunch of confidence. Especially since I was at that point only 4 months away from graduation, gave us opportunities to sell, do cold calls, do pitches. One of them actually ended up working out to a point where off a cold call, I was asked to do a pitch deck for a presentation to an Aaron's Furniture location in Niagara Falls. And after a few meetings, we actually ended up securing a trade deal with that Aaron's location to outfit their new Loge courtside premium seating options that were debuting in the summer of 2022. 2022. So just being hands-on in different areas, whether it was business operations or traveling to community events, that was huge. Then shortly after, I got hired by the Toronto Blue Jays to be a sales and service representative. That was essentially the inaugural cohort of what is now the Sales and Service Development Program. Over the course of my 6 months there, I was selling everything under the sun, whether it was season tickets, group tickets, ticket packs, things as niche as parking passes for folks that need those accommodations, the odd rooms lead, and then handling suite leads and transferring over to the premium team, as well as doing game day responsibilities, which included manning a sales booth on the 100 level of the stadium, as well as doing checks on their 400 level rooms seating options to make sure that those areas were operational and ready to go for the clients that were coming in that night. It was an amazing experience to be a part of that program, because it was a contract role, but the leadership there, which is still in place, they essentially said to us, our goal is to elevate you to full-time positions if you put in the work, if you put in the effort, if you put in the dedication, which was huge to hear, especially someone starting out in the industry, right? So I did that for about 6 months. In between, I took a bit of time off to volunteer as a media lead for the 2022 Canada Summer Games that were in the Niagara region. So I was stationed at the Welland Flatwater Centre, and I helped plan, execute, and lead their media workspace for competition days. So anytime a photographer needed to check in, anytime a reporter needed to check in, get their credentials reviewed, or anytime there was an interview, we needed to allocate media seating, I was there and leading a team of about it was a relatively small team, about 1 or 2 folks each day, to help with those operations. But in the midst of that, all of which was a really, really cool experience to be involved with the major games. I got an email from my former manager about the Jays, and he recommended that I should apply. And I didn't have much philanthropic experience up until that point. The main experience I had was running a virtual charity running race during 2020 and 2021. I ran it to support a local food bank in my area, but it was also just a self project to keep myself involved in sport in some form. Saw the application, knew that Jays Care did amazing work across the country, applied, and I got hired on in October of 2022, and I've been there for just over a year and a half, and with the Jays organization around 2 years, and here I am today. So that is the Cliff Notes version of my route.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what the podcast is about, and I appreciate you sharing that so far to date. And as the podcast kind of goes, let's go back to the beginning, and we'll work to where we are now. So I think you were mentioning there how your, let's say, route started. So I kind of want to get into Brock, because I think when I first started the podcast, the audience base was a little younger, whereas a lot more students, recent graduates. Obviously, it's aged out to maybe it's more young professionals, people from mid to late 20s to their 40s, but I think it's still relevant conversation in case someone listens. And I always keep little Chris in mind in case he was listening. So how did you I know you mentioned how you came about Brock, but was there ever any options to go elsewhere? If that makes sense. Was it always Brock's sport management program, or did you have other items in sight?
Well, funny enough, my first option was Ryerson Sport Media,
Mm.
and I really like that program just because like just the allure of broadcasting or and stuff like that at the time. But I ended up doing the app. I didn't get I didn't get accepted. But I remember that they had to do like this interview and process and stuff. And I went through it, and I remember walking out, and I'm just looking around because Ryerson, now known as Toronto Metropolitan University, is located in the heart of downtown Toronto. And I'm from Mississauga, so I know Toronto fairly well. Um, and I'm just looking around, and I'm like, well, this is it would be great if I could get in, but is this the university environment that I'm comfortable with for 4 years? I'm looking. I'm like, okay, I'm probably gonna be commuting, so using the go and the TTC to get around. Will that be my ideal university experience? And then I went to Brock, and then it's like, okay, and I distinctly remember I'm on campus. I'm just like, I feel like I'm home, you know, the area just felt right for me. I could, again, like I said, I could move away from home, live on my own for the first time. But at the same time, again, if I need anything, if I need to come home for a weekend, I was only an hour and change away. I could take a go bus, and a go train home relatively easily. So at the end of the day, that was the main motivator beyond any any alumni or fame
Yeah,
or famous folks in the industry
sure.
that went there, and
That makes
I'm
sense.
very glad that I made that decision.
Sure. And I guess with that too, one of the things I've kind of noticed with the podcast, even looking at my own career, I started off in accounting, then I went more to the marketing sales route, right? With
Right.
time. When I was 15, 16, I didn't necessarily see that coming. So I was kind of curious. I know you mentioned when you said, this whole journey kind of started maybe when you were at 15, a career in sports. Did where you were going ever waver, or were you kind of just along for the ride?
I was along for the ri- I was probably along for the ride, really. I mean, I you have this thought in your mind that like, oh, this could be really cool, but then you don't really think about it until it's like grade 11 or 12, and you're looking into university programs. You're just doing it organically. I would say, and then that leads to finding programs where it's like, oh, this is interesting. They've got specific programs tailored to sports business, right? So, um, you know, it was more just an organic thing that was a special interest of mine that I liked that I like doing. And The fact that there were specialized programs available that could give you a good shot into getting a career in sports. Drove me even more, right? As they say, you don't know you don't know what's to come
Mm-hmm.
until you choose that program, and you're on that campus. Like, believe me,
Yeah.
like when I chose Brock, my God, I nothing would have like prepared me for the experience that I was going to encounter.
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, that's good to hear. And I guess then you're touching on, kicking off that route and kind of just taking where it goes. Obviously, that you then had that, sorry, that internship with the Niagara River Lions, right? And I think you've touched on it, and it was pretty cool to kind of hear what you were doing. But the one part that I wanted to kind of maybe drill down on specifically that you touched on was the confidence that role gave you. right? Do you mind maybe touching on what gave you that confidence and how you're able to use that maybe even today?
I would say um, we had like that internship again had us doing a lot of things to the point where like me like from my point of view, like we weren't. I didn't feel like I was, like here's us interns and then there's like everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? We felt we like I felt like I was fully part of the team, invested in the invest in the business, and my boss gave us with direction the autonomy to do things and act and make us feel like more than we're just here for credit. He was able to give us things that could slowly build confidence, such as doing a certain amount of calls and getting X number of leads to follow up with, being in the know about things that are happening around happening around the league, and obviously creating pitches, practicing them in office, first as well prospective pitches, and then putting into action through real life experiences. And that other thing is that the meeting that I had, it's an extraordinary case. Having the ability to be involved in the project really early, that had real life implications and could impact the team long after I was gone, really spoke to really spoke to me and gave me so many learning lessons on how to approach major tasks, how to give yourself a best chance at success, and walk into the office every day and see what success looks like,
Yeah.
which is sometimes difficult to
Mm-hmm.
do, but when it works out, everyone's very happy.
For sure. And I guess with that too, then, how did that maybe confidence or experience parlay into the Jays, right? Because I think one of the biggest things that people like to touch on, especially maybe earlier on in your career or even as people are moving throughout it, was it through your network? Was it through an application? Like, how did that role come about? And then I'm assuming, obviously, that experience maybe helped you as well, but just kind of curious how you could touch on that. Then we'll dive into the role after.
With the Jays, I I found it just through job searching, on the I can't remember what website. It was probably the Rogers Jobs website, um, but I knew I knew one of the folks in my network. He used to work for the Jays, and when I applied once I secured in a first interview, he'd give me tips, on on what's like what to expect, how to approach questions, so on and so on and so forth. Just having that resource ahead of time, really helped in terms of in terms of preparation, as well. Plus, leaning on my internal network, my parents were and are still always there for helpful help for tips and tricks. So a combo of those things really helped on from a preparation standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you didn't touch on how that first role with the Jays came about, what you kind of did there. And then I wanted to dive into what you're doing now. I think that's something when we were messaging about coming on the podcast, you mentioned some things. So how about you maybe can share what your role entails? I think you touched on it a bit, but maybe diving into a bit further, maybe some of the cool projects you're working on as well, and then we'll dive into those future questions I like to ask every guest at the end.
Yeah, so with the philanthropy coordinator role, I'm responsible for most of the responsible for annual giving for Jay's Care. So those are folks that usually give once or twice throughout the year, and it's
Mm-hmm.
anywhere under anywhere under 1,000. But it is it's a lot of folks that give to Jay's Care. So it can be it can be a big task to manage. So what that entails is every donation I is stewarded through at least an email of thanks. That's to show appreciation to the donor. That's to educate them about what they are making possible for when it comes to Jay's Care programming. You know, what people don't realize is that some people don't realize is Jay's Care programming runs coast to coast. Every single province and territory has some form of Jay's Care programming, and in 2023, it impacted over 59,000 youth across the country. So that's enough to fill the Rogers Center and then some. So we provide that bit of education as a way to let them know what they're impacting, and also in turn to motivate them to learn more and potentially get involved in the months or years ahead, whether it's something as simple as being subscribed to quarterly updates, or donating again in the following year. Beyond that, I also one of the big projects I manage is the video board celebrations program. If anyone's been to a Jays game and have seen birthday or anniversary celebrations, that is the program that I run, and each message can be reserved through a donation to Jay's Care. So I have separate stewardship communications for that. We work closely with I work closely with the Blue Jays game operations team, who helps us helps produce and execute the messages to be played on the video board, and afterwards, after the homestand, we thank them as well for being a part of the program and for supporting Jay's Care. And usually they usually have around 6 pots per season, 6 pots per game, and if they're sellouts, it translates to a lot of donors throughout the year. I think last year there was at least 400 plus donors that were a part of the video board program, and it's usually popular amongst fans because they want to see their quote unquote name in lights and celebrate those that mean something or are close to them, whether it's like a birthday or anniversary or what have you. I also support other campaigns that run throughout the year. Things such as end of year appeals that support specific segments of Jay's Care programming. I also help out with when required with volunteering responsibilities. So fundraising events that we put on, such as our golf classic, or helping the programs team with their all-star events that happen at the Rogers Center. So the all-star events are big baseball fun days I think around we have at least 500 plus kids come to the Rogers Center for those days, and it's just a big day of baseball where they can go on the field. There's different drills, run the outfield, and on occasion some players join to help out as well. But
Yeah,
but
that's
I
very
tell you,
cool.
none are as popular as the Blue Jays' best player according to the kids, which is Ace. And
Hey,
I and what's and I tell you, last year I remember I was helping out with a batting practice drill, and I can't remember who was on the field. I think it was Jordan Romano and Tim Meza that were on the field, and they were getting a lot of attention. Then Ace comes out, and I swear to you, 80% of the drills stop, and there is just this stampede of kids running towards this running towards this giant blue bird, and everyone is losing their minds because Ace is on the field, and he's number one. So Ace is definitely the best player in baseball, and
yeah,
a nice add to those days. But
yeah, very
getting to
cool.
help out with that's a bonus, because it serves as a great teaching point
Hmm.
that the programming that we help support through fundraising means more than just hitting a ball
Yeah,
or throwing and catching. It creates impacts that that are both that you can quantify, and some that you can't, such as
yeah,
raising someone's self-esteem, making sure they're living a physically active life, and cutting into the loneliness epidemic that's currently facing Canada.
hmm,
I think it's something around like four
yeah,
in 10 Canadian families are still reporting adverse effects
sure,
on their kids because of the pandemic, and there's a large percentage right now that are still unable to afford sport due to the extreme costs that some activities have now for families. So
yeah,
with Jay's Care programming, the fundraising work that is done ensures that it's free, it's accessible, and it's inclusive for every single person involved.
yeah. It sounds like you're doing some great work. It's very cool to kind of hear about that. And as you were talking about Ace there, I thought that was perfect because it translates into my next question very well. Where, as I wrap up the podcast, one of the things I'd like to ask every guest is, I've been saying for 166 episodes now that I'm going to be 103. I'm going to be on a rocking chair. Think about all the cool things I've been able to do through my career so far, right? If I put Will in the same position, 103-year-old Will on a rocking chair, think about all the cool things that you've done in your career so far. What's maybe one, let's say, story that would stand out? From an outsider's perspective, I'd assume it'd be something with the Jays where we're on the field with the different kids, mascot, or even the athletes. But do you have maybe one story that you know for a fact when you're 103, you're going to remember that and be like, wow, that was a cool moment that I did during my career?
That I mean, I hope to make a lot more memories, a lot more memories down the road. That's one where where it really stands out. But two moments that I have, number one from one of those events that year in August. I was again running that batting practice drill, and it was a Challenger baseball all-star event. So kids with physical or cognitive disabilities were attending this event, and out of the corner of my eye, along comes Tim Meza to help. And there was this, and I remember there's this long line of kids that were waiting to hit, and he stayed as long as every single kid got a hit. Did not matter how many pitches he threw. It could be like 3 pitches. It could be 10. It could be more than that. He did not leave the station until every single kid got a hit off them, and was smiling. And to me, I look at that, and it's like that's a good person. That's a good person that knows that knows the impact of baseball and what it can have on children and youth, and to see a professional athlete see a professional athlete in that capacity, just willing to help and willing to impact those kids, was awesome to see, and it'll still stay with me forever. And the second one's probably the team picture that we had in the shallow outfield this year. After the Jays did their team picture, all staff, all these departments within the TBJ realm, so Jays Care, ticketing, marketing, corporate partnerships, you name it, were invited onto the field to take a picture with the team. So we all received hard copies at the end of it, and it's it's just nice to look at the picture, and it's like, oh, there's Guerrero, there's Chris Bassett. Oh, there's me. So that's an experience that I don't think I've ever had before, and it was quite something to see that picture, and it gives you a nice positive surge right there.
Oh yeah, I bet. Very cool to hear. And I guess then the last question I have is, sorry. So we went into the future, 103-year-old Will, right? Let's go back to that 15, 16-year-old version of yourself that you talked about at the beginning of the route. What's one piece of advice that you've learned since you were 15, 16, etc., finishing up high school, maybe walking onto Brock for the first time? What's one piece of advice that you've learned to date so far that when you go back in time, you can speak to a younger version of yourself? You're like, hey, little Will, this is something you should know because I've learned this, and I think it'd be a huge thing for you to know going forward.
That's a good question. I would say be open to anything, and don't limit yourself to what you can do. Even 2 years ago, I was sure I was gonna be in sales full time and progress forward in that field. But then philanthropy, the philanthropy position came along, and something told me that it was the right move to pursue, and I don't regret that decision. And I loved my time in ticketing, but I truly think when I joined when I accepted that offer, I joined a great team, I joined a great foundation, I joined a great culture that is that is super supportive, super helpful, super friendly, and approachable. So even if you don't think it's not your chosen niche right away, it's funny how things can change as time goes on, and so thankful that I made that decision. And I mean, going back to when I was 15, a lot of people know this. Some people know this, some people don't. I'm autistic, so with that comes some challenges, I guess, with everyday life. Eye contact, stutter in speech, social awkwardness, anxiety, etc., etc. But and you learn to deal with it over time, but it's something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. So I would say just don't hide behind it. It's a part of you. It's a great part of you. That's with you. And even though you're autistic, that no way in hell does that mean that you should limit yourself. If you want something, go all out and go get it. And if you fail, you fail. Because you're young enough that you still have enough time to regroup and figure something out. So, if I can be if you know if I can be a role model to those an inspiration to those in the autistic community, then then within the work that I do, then that would be awesome. But just don't limit yourself at all just because a disability, right?
Mhm.
Don't limit yourself, and as they say, just shoot for the stars, because if you once you take your shot at something you're passionate about, you just never know where it'll take you.
Yeah, and that's why exactly like I like ending with that question there. Right? I think it puts a perfect bow on it all at the end, and I think the quote you were just about to say too. I had that in my grade 9 English class. I always used to think of that too. It's like shoot for the moon. If you miss, you land amongst the stars. So I think that's a great way to end the podcast. Will, thank you so much for coming on, and that's it for episode 166. Thank you so much for sharing your route.
Not a problem, Chris. Great conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.